You've been working for years, you make decent money, but somehow your savings account still hovers around the same number it did last year. It's like water slipping through your hands, no matter how tightly you try to hold on. And the frustrating part, you're not being reckless. You budget, you track, you try. But beneath the spreadsheets and paychecks, there are 5 quiet traps, psychological ones that keep most people from ever crossing that $50,000 line. By the end of this video, you'll see exactly which one is pulling you under and how to finally break free. My name is Tony, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, psychology, and how emotions shape everything. If you're tired of being told to hustle without clarity, make sure to hit subscribe and like if this makes you think differently. Now, here's something that will blow your mind. You ever open your banking app and just stare? Not even to check a number, but to feel something: relief, dread, maybe both. You look at your balance, sigh, lock your phone, and promise yourself that next month will be different. But deep down, you already know. It probably won't. And that's the silent struggle most people live in. See, we're told that saving money is about discipline, about cutting lattes and building budgets, but it's not. It's about emotional energy, and most of us are running on empty. Think about it. When life constantly demands your attention, work, bills, relationships, that creeping sense that you're falling behind saving money doesn't feel like a reward. It feels like another chore. Another reminder that you're not there yet. Here's the thing. Financial exhaustion isn't loud. It's quiet. It's the background noise of modern life. It's that tension between wanting security and feeling too drained to chase it. You tell yourself you'll save once things calm down, once the next raise comes, once you feel more in control. But those moments never quite arrive, do they? Because control isn't about income, it's about internal capacity. And that's where most people get trapped. We live in a culture that celebrates earning but quietly ignores keeping. It's all about growth, hustle, expansion, make more, do more, be more. But if your nervous system is constantly in fight or flight, that pressure doesn't create progress, it creates paralysis. Think about that for a second. If your brain is wired for survival, every dollar you earn feels like a lifeline. So when you spend, it's not carelessness, it's self-soothing. It's a way to momentarily escape that heavy emotional load. And then, when you don't save, the guilt kicks in. You start to think, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just do it? But here's what most people never realize. Saving money requires safety, psychological safety. You can't build a foundation if your emotional house is on fire. Research from the American Psychological Association found that nearly 65% of adults say money is a significant source of stress, more than relationships, work, or even health. That's not just a statistic, it's a mirror. It means millions of people are trying to budget their way through an emotional storm. And that's why most financial advice doesn't work, because it skips over the psychology. It assumes you can think rationally about money while living in emotional chaos. But money isn't math, it's meaning. Every dollar tells a story about what we value, what we fear, and what we believe about ourselves. So, when you struggle to save, it's not because you're lazy or irresponsible, it's because your system is overloaded. You're trying to build wealth while your mind is still fighting for stability. Here's a metaphor. Imagine you're trying to fill a bathtub, but the drain's wide open. No matter how fast you pour, the water keeps slipping away. That's what it feels like to save while you're emotionally exhausted. You keep pouring effort, intention, energy, but something beneath the surface keeps leaking. And the worst part? You blame yourself for not filling it fast enough, instead of realizing the real problem is the drain. But here's the hopeful part. Once you start seeing your financial habits not as moral failures, but as emotional signals, everything changes. You stop punishing yourself and start listening. You realize that your spending isn't random, it's communication. It's your subconscious saying, I'm tired, I need relief. And that awareness, that's where healing starts. Because once you understand that money isn't just about discipline, but about emotional regulation, you can finally stop fighting yourself. You can rest. You can start saving from a place of stability, not scarcity. And that's where everything starts to shift. Because what if the real reason you can't save $50,000 isn't that you're bad with money, but that you've been surviving too long to feel safe holding it? In the next chapter, we'll talk about how that survival energy disguises itself as success through the illusion of progress we call lifestyle inflation. And that's where things get even more interesting. It usually starts small. You get that promotion, maybe a raise, and for the first time in a while, you feel comfortable. You upgrade your apartment, finally get that place with sunlight and decent countertops. You buy the shoes you used to scroll past. You start ordering the coffee you actually want, instead of the one you used to settle for. It feels good. It feels like proof that all those years of struggle are finally paying off. But here's the thing. That feeling, it doesn't last. Because somewhere in the background, something shifts. The new normal sets in, and within a few months, that same lifestyle that once felt like a reward now just feels average, ordinary. So you start chasing that feeling again. A slightly better apartment, a slightly nicer car, a slightly more you wardrobe. And slowly, without realizing it, your lifestyle grows in perfect proportion to your income, leaving you right back where you started. Still stressed, still waiting for enough. We call this lifestyle inflation. But beneath the surface, it's not really about lifestyle, it's about identity. Because when your income rises, your sense of self shifts too. You start thinking, I'm someone who can afford better things now. And that's a beautiful moment until it becomes a trap. See, your brain isn't actually trying to sabotage you, it's just trying to belong. For thousands of years, belonging meant survival. It still does, just in a different way. Today, it looks like keeping up fitting in with the version of success you see around you. So every time you earn more, your mind quietly whispers, you deserve more. You should have what they have. You've earned this. And that's true, you have earned it. But here's where most people go wrong. They confuse comfort with progress. Think about that for a second. Progress is movement toward a meaningful goal. Comfort is simply the absence of discomfort. One builds you, the other soothes you. But when life's been hard, when you've been living in survival mode, soothing yourself feels like growth. You start mistaking emotional relief for financial evolution. That's the mirage. You're walking through the desert chasing what looks like an oasis, but the closer you get, the further it moves away. Here's what research shows. According to a 2023 Gallup survey, about 61% of Americans earning over $100,000 still live paycheck to paycheck. 61%? That's not because they're reckless, it's because they've built a life perfectly calibrated to their income. The moment they earn more, the baseline shifts. Psychologists call it the hedonic treadmill. It means we quickly adapt to any increase in comfort and then crave more. Your brain literally recalibrates what normal feels like. That's why your first paycheck felt exciting, but your 10th just felt expected. And the worst part? We don't even notice it happening because society rewards it. We're surrounded by signals that say, upgrade, expand, reinvent yourself. It's subtle, but it's everywhere in the clothes influencers wear, in the cars parked next to yours, even in the way friends talk about treating themselves. So your nervous system learns growth equals consumption. And saving feels like standing still. But here's the truth most people never hear. Saving isn't stagnation, it's sovereignty. It's the quiet act of saying, I don't need to prove this version of myself to anyone. It's building stability, not for the sake of looking secure, but for the sake of feeling safe. Because the real trap isn't spending money. It's spending identity. You're not just buying a car, you're buying a sense of worth. You're not just renting a better apartment, you're renting proof that your struggle was worth it. And while there's nothing wrong with that in moderation, it becomes dangerous when your self-esteem depends on it. That's how you end up climbing a ladder that keeps extending itself. Every time you reach the next rung higher salary, bigger purchase, newer title, the top just moves a little further away. And at some point, you realize the ladder never ends. Because the goalpost isn't financial anymore, it's emotional. Here's the hopeful part. When you start seeing this pattern for what it is, not a failure of discipline, but a miswiring of reward, you can rewrite the script. You can ask a new question. What would it look like to grow internally instead of externally? That's when saving stops feeling like deprivation and starts feeling like freedom. Because now, every dollar you don't spend becomes evidence of something powerful, that your piece isn't for sale. And once you feel that, once you truly internalize it, you start playing a different game. You stop chasing appearances and start chasing alignment. And that's exactly what changes once you realize the next trap isn't about what you buy, it's about why you buy. Because that's where the emotional loop begins, the one we call the credit trap. And it's far more psychological than you think. It always starts the same way. You're having a rough week, work's been draining, your phone won't stop buzzing, and there's this quiet ache in your chest that you can't quite name. So, you open your favorite shopping app, you scroll, you add a few things to your cart, and for a moment, just a moment, the world feels lighter. It's not really about the item, is it? It's about the feeling, the control, the relief. That tiny rush when the confirmation email hits your inbox, it feels like progress, even if your bank account disagrees. Here's the thing. Debt isn't logical, it's emotional. People don't swipe their cards because they're bad with money, they swipe because they're trying to manage emotion. Credit, at its core, is just a permission slip for temporary relief. A quiet way to tell yourself, I deserve something nice right now. And honestly, you probably do. But here's where it gets tricky because that moment of relief comes with a hidden cost. Once that dopamine wears off, the guilt sets in, you start rationalizing, I'll pay it off next month. But next month becomes next season. And suddenly, you're not just paying for that thing, you're paying for that moment of escape. Psychologists have a term for this, emotional spending loops. It's when your brain uses money as an emotional regulator, like a pressure valve for stress, boredom, or even loneliness. When life feels chaotic, spending gives you a sense of order. When you feel unseen, buying gives you visibility. When you feel powerless, swiping gives you control. The problem is, it's a false control, one that slowly turns on you. Think about that for a second. Credit cards don't just sell convenience, they sell permission. Permission to stop feeling bad, even if just for a few minutes. And if you grew up in financial stress or in a family where money was unpredictable, that permission can feel intoxicating. Because for once, you get to decide. You get to say yes to yourself. But here's what's really happening underneath. You're not buying things. You're buying peace. You're buying relief. And relief is expensive. A 2022 report by LendingTree found that nearly half of Americans carry a balance month to month, and the average household pays over $1,000 a year in credit card interest alone. That's not just a statistic, it's a collective sigh. It's millions of people trying to emotionally breathe through their finances. And this is where most financial advice misses the point. It tells you to cut up your cards or stop spending as if the behavior itself is the problem. But the truth is, debt is just the symptom. The real problem lives beneath the numbers in the unspoken emotions we've never been taught to process. Here's a metaphor that might help. Imagine your emotions are water in a dam. Every stressor, every unmet need, every frustration adds pressure behind that wall. If you never release it in healthy ways through rest, connection, reflection, eventually it bursts. Spending becomes your release valve, a quick flood of, I feel okay again. But the more you rely on it, the weaker the dam gets. Because you're draining energy from the wrong source, your future self. Here's the hopeful part. Debt isn't a character flaw, it's a feedback loop. It's information, it's your emotions trying to communicate in the only language they know: dollars. Every time you overspend, your nervous system is saying, I need something. It's asking for rest, for reassurance, for safety. So instead of shame, try curiosity. Ask yourself, what emotion am I trying to buy right now? You'll start noticing patterns. Maybe it's stress after work, or loneliness at night, or the need to prove something to someone who's not even watching anymore. And once you see it clearly, the power shifts. Because now, you're not reacting, you're responding. You're starting to regulate your emotions before they reach for your wallet. That's how the loop ends, not through punishment, but through awareness. When you stop using credit as comfort, you reclaim it as a tool. And that shift, that quiet inner shift, changes everything. Because once you break the emotional credit loop, you stop chasing temporary relief and start building permanent peace. And that's exactly what leads us into the next trap, the one that sounds harmless but silently kills progress. The belief that someday you'll have it all figured out. Because someday is the most expensive word in personal finance. You ever tell yourself, once I make more, I'll start saving? It sounds logical, right? Like, once things calm down, once the job stabilizes, or the debt's gone, or life finally stops being so expensive, then you'll get serious about money. But here's the quiet truth most people never say out loud. More never feels like more. It just becomes your new normal. And that's what makes this trap so dangerous. See, your brain loves the idea of someday. It's comforting. It gives you permission to feel safe right now, to delay the discomfort of change until later. But the problem is, later doesn't exist. Here's the thing. Your brain is wired to prioritize immediate relief over future reward. It's a survival mechanism, not a moral failure. In psychology, they call it temporal discounting, the tendency to care less about the future than the present. So when you say, I'll start saving once I earn more, what your mind actually hears is, I'll deal with it once I feel less anxious. But here's the paradox. Money doesn't erase anxiety, it amplifies whatever's already there. Think about that for a second. If your relationship with money is rooted in avoidance, more money won't fix it, it'll just give you more to avoid. You'll keep pushing the goalpost further out. First it's, I'll save when I make 60K. Then it's, I'll save when I make 80. Then 100. Then 120. And by the time you hit those numbers, you realize that the feeling you were chasing, safety, peace, enoughness, doesn't come from income. It comes from intention. There's this fascinating study from Princeton that found emotional well-being levels off after around $75,000 a year in income. Above that, happiness doesn't grow much because after your basic needs are met, what you crave isn't more money, it's more meaning. But our culture doesn't teach that. It teaches us to delay life, to postpone rest, joy, and even self-respect until we've earned it. We turn someday into a finish line that keeps moving just out of reach. And this is where temporal self-neglect comes in, this strange phenomenon where we treat our future selves like strangers. If you think about it, most of us wouldn't steal from a friend. But every time we overspend, procrastinate, or avoid saving, that's exactly what we do. We borrow from our future self's peace to fund our present comfort. It's not cruelty, it's disconnection. Your future self isn't real to your brain, not yet. It's like a blurry version of you standing on the other side of time, so it's hard to care about them because you don't feel like them. But here's the reframe. Every dollar you save isn't punishment, it's protection. You're not depriving yourself, you're taking care of someone you're becoming. Imagine your future self 5 years from now sitting somewhere calm, maybe sipping coffee on a quiet morning. They're not stressed, they're not panicking about bills or emergencies, they're just steady. That version of you exists only if the current you makes choices with empathy, not guilt. And this is where most people go wrong. They treat saving like a restriction when in reality, it's a love language. It's how you tell your future self, I've got you, because one day you'll face a moment, a layoff, a medical bill, an unexpected shift, and the money you saved will whisper back, don't worry, you're safe. That's what real wealth sounds like. Not abundance, not luxury, safety. So the next time you catch yourself saying, I'll save when, stop and ask, what if I started now, even a little? Because $10 saved today matters infinitely more than $100 saved someday. Someday is a myth. Now is the only real thing you have. And once you grasp that, once you start feeling empathy for your future self, you stop waiting for more and start building enough. And that's where everything starts to shift. Because while some people are stuck chasing someday, others are stuck chasing chaos, that constant feeling that peace is unsafe. And that's exactly what we're diving into next. The next trap isn't about time or money, it's about nervous system wiring. The one I call the chaos comfort zone. You ever notice how some people, maybe even you, seem to function better when things are falling apart? Like when the bills pile up, when the deadlines crash in, when life feels like it's on fire, that's when you suddenly come alive. You focus, you hustle, you fix. But the moment things start to calm down, when money finally starts stacking up or life slows down, you get restless. You start finding new problems to solve, new fires to light. It's not self-sabotage, it's self-protection. Here's the paradox. Some people are more comfortable in chaos than in calm, because chaos feels familiar. If you grew up in instability, financial, emotional, or both, your nervous system learned early on that peace wasn't safe. That comfort always came with a cost. That the moment things got quiet, something bad was about to happen. So now, as an adult, your brain still runs that same survival script. You crave stability, but when you finally get it, it feels wrong. It feels foreign. So you unconsciously recreate the chaos you're used to. You overspend, you forget to check your account, you take on more projects than you can handle. Not because you want drama, but because your body associates stability with danger. Here's the thing, this isn't a character flaw, it's conditioning. Psychologists call this familiarity bias. Your nervous system is drawn to what it recognizes, not what's healthy, not what's logical, but what feels normal. And if your normal was chaos, then peace feels threatening. That's why so many people self-sabotage right when things start to improve. It's not that they don't want success, it's that their system doesn't know how to feel safe in it yet. Think about that for a second. If you've spent years sprinting from one financial fire to another, overdrafts, emergencies, late fees, your body has adapted to the adrenaline. It's like being addicted to instability. When calm arrives, it feels like withdrawal. So you do what any human does. When the discomfort gets too strong, you reach for the thing that feels familiar. Maybe that's another treat yourself purchase. Maybe it's ignoring your budget. Maybe it's telling yourself, I'll start over next month. And suddenly the chaos returns. And strangely, you feel alive again. But here's where this gets really interesting. Research from trauma psychology shows that people who experience chronic stress early in life often struggle to sustain stability later on. Not because they're broken, but because their nervous system never learned how to trust stillness. You see, saving money isn't just a financial act, it's an emotional one. It's saying, I'm safe enough to let things sit. But if you were taught that safety never lasts, saving can actually feel unsafe. It can feel like waiting for the other shoe to drop. So you unconsciously spend or overextend just to stay in motion because motion feels safer than quiet. Here's the hopeful part. You can rewire that. It starts by noticing the urge to stir things up when life feels calm. That moment where peace feels too quiet, that's your signal. That's the doorway to healing. Instead of reacting, pause. Breathe. Tell yourself, it's okay to feel safe. Sounds simple, but it's profound. Because each time you allow yourself to sit in that calm without needing to break it, you're teaching your nervous system a new truth. That stability doesn't mean danger. It means freedom. And here's the metaphor I like to use. Imagine your financial life as a snow globe. For years, you've been shaking it constantly, habitually, because that's what feels natural. But the clarity you're looking for only comes when you let it settle. The snow has to fall before you can see clearly. And when it does, everything starts to make sense. Because once you learn to let peace stay, saving no longer feels like control, it feels like care. You stop running from calm and start building your life inside it. And that's where everything starts to shift. Because the next trap, the final one, isn't about chaos at all. It's about identity. What happens when your external life changes, but your internal identity hasn't caught up yet? That's what we'll explore next. It's funny. You can fix your habits, fix your budget, fix your spending, and still find yourself slipping back. Not because you're lazy, not because you don't care, but because deep down, a part of you still doesn't believe you're someone who can be financially stable. That's the invisible wall. No one talks about the identity gap. Here's the thing. Every financial transformation eventually runs into this moment. You've done the work, you're saving consistently, you're being intentional, and yet there's this quiet tension between the person you're becoming and the person you still believe you are. Because if, at your core, you still identify as someone who struggles with money, your subconscious will always find ways to prove that true. You'll overspend after a win. You'll pull from your savings just this once. You'll do small, subtle things to return to what feels familiar. Not because you want to, but because consistency feels foreign when chaos has been home. Psychologists call this cognitive dissonance, the discomfort we feel when our actions no longer match our self-image. And instead of updating our identity to fit our new life, most people unconsciously sabotage their new life to fit their old identity. Think about that for a second. You're not fighting your habits, you're fighting your self-concept. If you've spent years being the one who can't save, then saving money threatens your sense of who you are. You might not even realize it, but your brain quietly whispers, "This isn't you. You're not one of those people." And it'll find small ways to bring you back to baseline, to what feels emotionally true. Here's where it gets deeper. Identity isn't built by crossing milestones, it's built by keeping promises. Every time you follow through, even in tiny ways, you send evidence to your brain. This is who I am now. And that's how it starts to believe you. You go from trying to save to being someone who saves. You go from managing money out of fear to protecting it out of respect. Because when your behavior and your identity finally align, discipline stops feeling like effort. It starts feeling like truth. Here's a simple exercise that changed how I saw this. When you save money, don't just say, "I saved $100. Say, "I'm the kind of person who protects my peace." Because saving isn't just about dollars, it's about identity reinforcement. It's a daily vote for the person you're becoming. And the more votes you cast, the harder it becomes to doubt who you are. But here's the hopeful part. Once you shift from chasing goals to embodying identity, you stop fighting against yourself. You stop asking, "How do I save?" and start asking, "What would a saver do?" That one question changes everything. Because hitting $50,000 or any number isn't about tactics, it's about alignment. When who you are matches what you do, progress becomes peace. And that's where everything starts to integrate, where money stops being about survival and starts being about self-trust. Because the real transformation isn't just about building wealth, it's about becoming someone who believes they deserve to keep it. And that realization sets up the final chapter, the one where everything you've learned finally clicks into place. Because now, it's not about money anymore. It's about identity, healing, and freedom.